I hate it when you show people your penis in Snapchat, but here we are.
And we're back. Beyond Bars, Season 2. We are back again with myself, Catherine Gongaware.
Kyrie the Comic.
Felonious Monk, a.k.a. Felonious Monk. That's it.
And our guest today,
Johnny Page.
Johnny Page. This is Beyond Bars for those of you that are new or need a reminder because it's been a minute. We are a criminal, quote unquote, justice podcast. We highlight people that have either had experience with the criminal system, been through it themselves, working tangential to it. And we, talk about shit we like to think that people aren't otherwise maybe as open talking about, or to your point, I don't want to say comedic in every way, but we're willing to go and say the things that we like to think not everybody is. So
In the corner.
Well, Johnny, thank you so much for joining us today, Johnny Page. And you were connected to us through Kyrie. Let's hear a little bit about that. How y'all know?
So let me just intro.
Yeah.
Johnny Page is a pillar in the community. This brother is doing the work. He's been doing the work for years. He's always been a solid brother. I had the pleasure of working with him, training under him, learning.
Where did y'all work?
Oh, that's a great question. Contextos. So I
had
the pleasure to do some of my first circle training and hold my first circle spaces with Contextos. But I'm honored for Johnny Page to be here because of his consistency in doing the work, his brand as somebody who cares about his people and doing the work, and his ability to influence me to want to do the work at a higher clip and for more years. So super honored and happy to have you here today, brother.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And we'll truly echo that. We know quite a bit about Contextos. We know a little bit about Johnny, and say individually and at large with the organization. But do you want to tell us a little bit about Contextos and your role as executive director there still, right?
Yes,
cool.
yes. So, of course, yes, I'm the executive director of Contextos Chicago. So Contextos is a transnational organization. So we actually function. We do this work not just in Chicago, but in Central America as well. I just run the Chicago operations. But we're a storytelling organization, and we use the power of personal narratives to sort of help uplift people, give people an opportunity to sort of heal and transform, to create pathways for them through their own stories, though, right? So storytelling is as old as we are, right? And when I say we, I mean humankind. And so we just use the power of that, the thing that we know best, our humanity, to sort of uplift the voices of folks in different spaces. And one of those spaces just happened to be the legal criminal system.
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of sounds like you do what we do better. So thank you for that. Yeah, and you guys don't just work in and around the incarceral system, right? You're in communities, you're in schools. I saw a couple other places that y'all operate. Tell us a little bit about like the populations that you serve.
So we work with the incarcerated population, pretrial detainees in Cook County. But also we work in the community with like community-based violence prevention organizations. We work with schools, Chicago public schools, charter schools, pretty much anyone who needs it, right? And for me, my take is everyone needs it, a space to unpack. And so that's what we do. We sort of create caring spaces for folks to unpack.
Just a question about because we hear a lot about violence in Chicago, especially with the DNC coming to Chicago, and it's been a talking point since 2015 specifically, right? What would you like for people to know about the violence prevention programs? Because we keep hearing that they're going to send in this. We're doing the work here. What would you like for people to know about the violence prevention programs, not just with Contextos, but other groups that you've worked with or may have partnered with?
I mean, that it's great people doing the work. And the number one thing is that in order to do the work effectively, you have to fund it efficiently, right? And so part of the issue, I think, has been this sort of lack of resources. Over the past few years, we've seen more resources poured into the community to do community violence intervention, but we need more resources, right? And then we need more access, right? So, for example, no matter how much I've done, I've been to the White House, right? But I can't go into Chicago public schools and do work.
Imagine that.
But I mean, that's literally exactly what we're talking about. Like, we've been having this argument about the language around defunding and funding and who needs to be funded and who should be funded. And we all know that community-based policing, if policing exists, is the only kind that's healthy, right? Mm-hmm. Who do we need to convince to move the funds to the places where they need to go? My bad.
Left the White House, bro.
Coming in
I'm
hot
going back to the
today.
jokes, dog. I'm going back to the jokes.
No. So I mean, it's a great question, right? I think what happens is, so when we think about it, there's an ecosystem that operates that allows us to sort of address the issues of violence in our communities. Oftentimes, the ecosystem sort of supplants the ecosystem, right? And so because we have to bump up against the ego system, the ecosystem sort of gets disrupted. And as we know, violence is a byproduct of a disrupted ecosystem. And so one of the things that I would like to see is that more collaborative effort across the ecosystem, so to make sure that the resources get to where they need to go so that folks can do the work that they need to do and the community can grow in the way it needs to grow.
Oh my
That's
God!
beautiful. Yeah.
You just dropped the ball.
If not
wish
watching the three of our reactions.
Please, I know that we're catching everything, but I need just that reaction shot of me, Kyrie, and Catherine when you said the eco and the ecosystem, because all of us were like,
we're
this
upset.
this was Loaded Lux round 2.
It was.
He
Bars.
said the ego. We were like, son went crazy.
Nothing three writers hate more than someone
you
coming
got
in.
the poet. Well, I should have warned y'all. That brother nice with the poetry pen.
That was
And I was
beautiful.
thinking like, hey, why he just do that like that?
But that was,
Yeah.
but no, the that's such a, that's as a parent, because I'm trying to stop the carceral system in my family at home as a parent first, because I think that's where it begins, right?
Correct.
We're parented in the carceral system. You don't do this thing, I'm going to punish you. So you learn that the consequence of your action is punishment early, not hey man, this is a logical consequence. You stayed up too late, now you're going to be tired tomorrow. No, you stayed up too late, so tomorrow you have to do extra stuff. That's carceral parenting, and we do it everywhere. We do it as soon as you go to schools. So I always tell my wife, we had this conversation, that when I get mad at my son and I start to lean into the way that I was parented, that's my ego. Every time I can think of, I'm like, no, I'm upset that he didn't do what I asked him to do. It's not that he did something wrong. He didn't do what I asked him to do. My ego was hurt, and so I have to show him I'm in charge. That's the ego system. And so to hear somebody talk about like the larger, ecosystem versus ego, like that was I just need all of those cameras to see us going.
Yeah.
That was
You fucked us
crazy.
up a little bit.
That
with
was
that.
crazy.
I wasn't ready for
fucked
that.
up.
Nah. But yeah, that's a really good point. So yeah, it doesn't matter who we ask. We just have to ask the person who's willing to, and I think a lot of this is, are you willing to trade votes for people's lives? Right? Because if we're talking about funding programs that are nonviolence programs, we're talking about funding educational programs. There's no reason you're not in schools. There's no reason other than ego that you're not in schools. But we're talking around the point. We want our community safer. Everyone knows, it's historically proven, it's been studied by Stanford, Harvard, Yale, that funding, giving resources to youth programs, to children, prevents violence later. But all we're hearing about is, I'm going to make you safer by locking more people up. And that's across the board. It doesn't matter how progressive your local politicians are. That's what we're hearing every election cycle, because that's what stirs the people up. And so I'm grateful for the work you do. You reminded me right before we got on air that I'd done some work with you. But I think what people forget is these are humans that we're talking about as if they're political things, right? Like, oh, we need to fund this program or that. No, we need to fund people. We need to invest in human beings. And that's what you're doing. With or without the money, your programs invest in people.
Right, definitely. So the way, two things. We saw what happened when we try to, incarcerate our way out of a problem, right? We became the world's leader in incarceration. This little word we call mass incarceration, right? And it didn't solve anything, right? So to that point, yes. The other thing is that we all are in need of a little healing, right? So even those of us, myself included, who's in a space where folks would say, "Oh, Johnny's successful," right? My high school reunion was this past weekend. Yeah, I went to Hyde Park, the Hyde Park, right? So if you
I'm from out west. I don't feel no way, brother.
Okay, you should.
No, I don't, because I'm from out west.
All right.
You
He's
say
like,
that for the
you should.
Kenwood
I'm
brothers.
just saying.
I don't feel
okay.
no way.
I'm just saying.
I don't want no smoke.
I just wanted to put that out there, right? But
See, you had it for me
Yeah,
though.
really.
It's that time for you.
Leaned in.
Like, I'm from out west. I'm from we Neutron, bro.
Okay. I'm just saying. This, I know how. This
CPS get like that.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about
If you had a
reunions.
Whitney, if I was from Whitney Young, apparently that would have been a real issue.
Well, technically, I don't really think so.
If you was in if you was in Kenwood, y'all would be beefing.
It's Kenwood Hyde Park, not Whitney Young.
Well, you know they're right next to each other. So.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it's High Park versus everybody. So
See,
that's
look,
just
Simeon, they want everybody. It's like
Everybody.
Oh,
I'll
Right.
take all the smoke.
all of it. But I think just thinking about like how we're all on a healing journey, right? And so, people will look at me and just like I said at the high school reunion, folks are like, "Oh, we're so proud of you," right? Because I'm the person that's sitting here in front of this microphone is not the person that was in high school, right? So I'm a little bit more polished, right? I'll just say that. And because of that, people think I have it all figured out, right? But I'm still on a healing journey. I just started mine a lot later. Right, and I started to understand a lot earlier than some other folks, right? So later for some and earlier than others, right? And so since we're all as human beings, we're all going through something, and we need to have a space to sort of heal. And when we're talking about young people who are subject to the criminal legal system, it's problematic because we think about them as adults, right? So think about this, right? An 18-year-old, 17-year-old, 16-year-old. So I'm thinking about this because it's fresh. I literally just walked out. Before I came here, I just left Cook County Jail, Division 9, with a group of 18-year-olds, right? And you're holding them, they're thinking, they're processing everything. You're holding them to Johnny, who's 50 plus, right? So here it is, you're holding them to the standard of me, right? But they can't buy cigarettes. They can't legally do a whole lot of things, but you'll sentence one of them to 100 years in prison. Well, now they say 40 years, but 40 years is 100 years at 100%. So if you got to do every day for 40 years,
And you're 18.
and you're
Yeah.
18,
That's your whole life.
that's it, right? And so thinking about that, right, what is the consequence for a system that would do that to a child, right?
Particularly when again, we're talking science.
Science.
We're talking science that their frontal lobe isn't developed, that their impulse control isn't developed, that they literally, I'm just saying I'm trying to be easy on kids. Literally, scientists have proven that their frontal lobe is not developed for at least another 7 to 10 years. And you're holding them accountable for the next 40 years for a decision that they made in a position where they couldn't be. Now, if I'm inebriated, there are things that I can't be held accountable for.
Poverty.
But you're holding children. Because I was 19 when I got arrested. Right? So I did 6 years at the age of 19. And I remember when the judge gave me the 32 years, I had no concept of how long 32 years was. I'd only lived 19. You can't give me a number beyond the amount of years I've lived.
Right.
I've only been cognizant of how old I am for about 14 of those 19. You gave me 32. I don't know how long that is.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying to kids. So sometimes I ask my son, hey, man, if you do that, here's the long-term consequence. And he says, I understand. I still want to do it. That's what an undeveloped frontal lobe is. They can't really grasp long-term consequences, and we're sentencing them. So the question is not just what does that do to the kids? What kind of system do we live in that is holding itself as a moral authority while being immoral? That's an immoral thing to do, to punish somebody who's not capable of making a choice.
And it's a separation of like yourself versus others too. Because like if you ask, to your point, any like 18-year-old or kid, like they can't fathom a consequence, right? Or a long term, and frontal lobe maybe aren't developed, like whatever the situation is, you're 18, like any 30-year-old or 50-year-old can say like, yeah, I was a fucking moron at 18, right? Like any single person can look back and be like, yes, if I was held to the full account of all of my decisions at that time, like things wouldn't have turned out great. If every single action that I did had like an appropriate consequence, like no single person hasn't made a mistake that they wouldn't look back on and be like, that actually could have gone super awry, right?
Horrible.
And the difference is a lot of people are paying for it, right? A good number of people are paying for it. A very intentional group of people are paying for it. And a very intentional group of people, white people, remove themselves from it and say, like, I actually... Like every single person I talk to after a show, when I say something about like, so I don't know, we have formally met. I don't know how aware of me as a person you are. I'm the president of Prison Yoga Chicago. We teach at Cook County Jail, and we teach yoga in divisions 11, 5, 6, in any event. We have a similar work path. And when I talk about that and like comedy, and Felonious, you might experience this a little bit too because you talk about what you do on stage. But I think especially with me, a lot of white men will come up to me after shows and they'll be like, how come I can't get a yoga class, right? Like, how come you're teaching criminals yoga,
That does
but
happen
not
to
me?
me a lot. A lot of white men come up to me and
Do they ask
me
why you
Yeah.
are up in their
every
lives?
show.
That is. Some
mean,
Can I take a
And it's
picture?
not-
Also,
The only reason I
Stop with
mention it
downward dog, bro.
is not, again, an ego thing for me, but the only sort of effective response that I've had to that kind of interaction is to say, like, I'm sorry, like, have you ever been arrested? Like, the separation of you versus these individuals who I'm providing yoga to because they have no other access to it, like, and your judgment around that, like, have you really never committed a crime? And on God, 75% of the time, because this is the same kind of mindset that would ask me a question like that, right? As from a person with this experience, is, oh yeah, but like I got off, obviously. Like I had a good lawyer. I had
had a
DUI.
good
I
lawyer.
was speeding ticket. I hit a car. Hit, like something even more, I would argue, egregious than what a lot of these 17, 18, 19-year-olds are sitting in jail cells for. And it's there seems to be a moment of registration, but I don't know. For me personally, I don't know what to do to take it beyond there. But sorry to.
No,
I think Kyrie was
Yeah,
having a response to that
I'm
too.
sorry.
I just-
Monk put them dry ass granola bars on the table and it
really
echoed.
a whole.
Look, he ain't looking at me.
A
You're
whole
gonna
crunch.
choke. I hope you got some water. So to your point, brother, the system that allows that type of stuff to happen to youth is functioning how it was developed to function. And I saw it up close with Contextos. For the first place I was placed to do circles was in CVS High School. Wild experience. Wow, because my background wasn't necessarily in doing, peace circles and stuff like that. And since I went on and got, certified with the Precious Blood Ministry,
Keep in
et cetera.
mind,
And so over the years, I appreciated like all of the experiences, but to be in an after school program that I know it's important, Contextos know it's important, the school is doing everything it can, the resources are thin. One of my students gets shot. She pull up the next week back to circle, still banging, not understanding, hey, that's what just got you shot.
Just got you shot.
And so when we talk about development of brains, I can't help but feel like if the system is doing this, then what are we going to do to the system? Because the system's going to self-perpetuate.
The other question, and Johnny, you
Well, is it
have the
supposed to,
most
to your
experience here with
point?
this. How long have you been going to the prisons?
So to like, I'm gonna give more context to it. I've been going to the prisons or going inside in and out of jails and prisons as a free person
I was
since
gonna,
since
So we could rewind and get your
yeah,
whole story.
yeah. So
Let's have us
roughly
tell your story. This is what you do.
roughly 9 years. But I was released from prison 10 years ago, right? So September 26th of this year will be 10 years that I walked out of prison after serving 24 years, right? So I went. So
What? Every gunshot isn't violent? What's wrong with you people?
right, and so I spent 24 years
Not even wop wop.
inside the system.
24 straight?
20, uninterrupted, no breaks.
Hold on.
I thought it was accumulative.
Consecutive? You
Right.
did those consecutively?
No break? You didn't take a water break?
No, you take time off. I remember days where I would wake up, I was like, hey, I'm not doing time today.
And they were like, Monk.
No, they would count me.
It's
I
all
just didn't
good.
get out of bed. That's a true story. I would
Yeah, you're
tell
still
them, like,
there.
I'm here, but I'm not doing time today. I'm not going to do any of the stuff that I'm supposed to do because there's only so much time you can do without spazzing out. So sometimes you gotta be like, today I'm not doing prison.
I spent a lot of time spazzing out in the beginning, so I'm just gonna
See?
be honest
No,
with you,
that's-
right?
that's
so
how I learned.
I wasn't,
Yeah,
so
what was your experience like, and where were you? Tell us a little.
So I spent, all the maximum security prisons in the state of Illinois, right? So Pontiac, Stateville, Menard. I spent time in all the maximum security prisons, and then I went to I spent a few years in different medium maximum security prisons, and then I spent like maybe two years of just like solitary confinement in different prisons. So yeah, that was the
and
experience.
when did you start to cut you off? But just for people to get to know you a little bit better, when did you enter the system?
I went to
Like, at what
prison.
age
I went
first?
to prison. I was 19. I got arrested. I was 18. I went to prison. I was 19, and I stayed. I walked out of prison. I was 41.
Damn.
Right. I always say my kid was 1 month old when I left, right? And when I returned, my oldest child, and then she was 23. Yes, when I was released. But I want to say a couple things, right? One thing when we're talking about like the 25-year-olds, right? Or the up to 25-year-olds. I'm saying 25-year-olds because I'm thinking about 25 is when you turn 26, your parents can kick you off insurance, right? So that's the science. They're saying that you haven't fully developed, right? But when you talked about the frontal lobe, what I was thinking about was you're talking about a normal pathway, right? So not folks impacted by trauma for the first 13, 14, 15 years of their existence, right? So think about this: if our pathways, just biology, it's fight or flight, right? Fight, flight, freeze, and you live in communities where you're stuck in a state of perpetual fight, flight, or freeze, and you're in a culture that says if you freeze, you may die, right? And you don't run, right? So you have to fight. So think about, so you're talking about a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old who's been in a perpetual state of fight, right? Then that even complicates this argument about like brain development when we're talking about trauma. And again, this is the science.
Scientifically based.
The science is saying trauma changes the body. They didn't get acknowledged until adverse childhood experiences and white folks in San Francisco, right? So that's where.
Until we started talking yoga too, and started saying like your sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, until we started acknowledging like, oh, actually, trauma, I have it too.
Yeah. Right. And I still don't think it's been impacted in the sentencing though. The crazy thing is like we understand what poverty does to kids. We understand what the ACEs mean. We understand that it's literally scientific that the kid's nervous system is reflective. When you're in poverty in the hood, is reflective to those who are growing up in war-torn countries.
Without a doubt.
How is that reflective in our sentencing of the youth that are raised in this environment, though, which is
it's
wild.
not. And again, so let me say this, too, because I want to be clear, because sometimes when we start having these conversations, folks think like, oh, they just want to be nice. They don't want consequences. No, I believe in freaking consequences. I just know that as someone who spent 24 years in prison for a crime that I didn't commit, right? Yeah, so that's a whole nother conversation. But
we'll get to it.
Yeah. So I'm saying, but I always tell folks, I spent a lot of time in prison for something I didn't do, but don't feel sorry for me because I was living a particular way, right? But I understand that. But it's like even when the person asks you, why can't I get yoga and they're getting yoga in jail, right? That's the same argument they use to take college out of prison for 20 years, right? So you can't get access to these things because folks in society, this shit is set up for if white guy from at random comedy show that's asking this question, you can go sign up for a yoga program tomorrow.
I'm aware of what the intention behind that and this whole conversation is.
They did the same
which
thing
has
with air
nothing to do
conditioning.
with yoga.
They did the same thing with me. Like we lost.
Nothing.
I was in prison when they lost college. I was in college in prison and so this is why we were talking about the DNC coming. Clinton was president. I remember I was the super predator. I was literally who they were defining as a super predator at the time. Drug dealer, violent crime. The 1994 crime bill. I was locked up in 92. 94, I was already in class, and free people complained, why are they able to go to college while they're in prison and I have to pay XYZ? The question should have been, why do you have to pay XYZ? Not why am I able to go? But what they're missing is, why are you preparing them to be a better person? Because this is the real question. Why are you preparing them to be a better person with better job prospects, which prevents them from recidivism or will at least reduce recidivism? If you ask the question that way, you see how stupid it sounds. So you can't ask it that way, right?
But that's the mindset of they've made their choice, which again goes back to like what, and you haven't made the wrong choice.
Right.
Like,
but that was the other question
That's
I
an
had.
intentional trap mindset.
Because you've been there long enough,
too.
right? You started at that. I currently am of the belief that social media combined with the trauma makes it almost impossible for a kid born in poverty, born in trauma, to escape it. It's almost impossible because the dopamine hit you get from scrolling, the only thing that you could compare that to is that energy of, fight or flight. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So you have kids who are now almost programmed to either commit crimes or become super famous as a rapper. Like that's the mindset now. And I've watched it switch. I have to fight my own kid to keep him off the iPad so that he can be bored. Because I was bored. And let me say this.
Yeah.
If you aren't bored at home, you will be in a cell.
Oh, for sure.
You're not
You don't
getting
know
any
to
of that.
handle yourself.
You got 24 hours to be with you.
You just got quotables all
But-
pod today.
yeah, but
all
that- but-
goddamn day.
But that's the thing, though. We're not taught to like sort of to be in our own space.
No.
Right. We have to always fill it up with something.
Yeah.
But you said something that was interesting for me was when they say when they took the school out, because I was in school at the time when they took it out in prison, and one of the things that I don't get to get schooled, and these guys are getting schooled, and I'm saying, Pell Grant was for folks,
Everybody.
poverty, folks who couldn't afford to go to school. If I'm in prison,
I couldn't afford to go to school.
I couldn't afford to go to school. So me getting the Pell Grant is not disqualifying you from getting the Pell Grant. It's not stopping you from getting the Pell Grant.
It wasn't a limited grant.
Yeah, and that was part of the argument. But and for me, I always tell people that who would you rather return? Who would you rather return?
That's the
That's what we tell
argument.
people
Who would
too.
you rather
Sending
return?
the whole
That's what we
idea
tell
of
people, too.
corrections is to correct, right? So who would you rather return?
Arguably,
Arguably,
right?
right?
Arguably.
I mean,
By
this,
the literal definition of Cook County Department of Corrections, you
Right.
assume that it is a correctional facility. Of
Right.
course, that's not.
I mean, it's not just Cook
how
County.
it's treated,
Illinois
but-
Department of
Right, I
Corrections,
just mean
the
that- yeah.
Indiana
But the
Department of
reality- yeah.
Corrections, the New York Department of Corrections.
Right.
The idea is to correct, right?
Right.
So whether to be correct a particular behavior, to correct, but whatever that thing is, it's to correct. And the ultimate goal is to sort of create spaces and an opportunity for folks to have the time, who have the time now, right? Because you've put them in a place to sort of correct behavior or to correct thinking that allow them to be in a place. And what is a better place to correct thinking than a school building where you can actually utilize the things that you're learning, right? To think. You're in a space where you don't have nothing but
No distractions.
to think.
Is
And
there any other department that is shooting such a low free throw percentage? They shooting like Shaq, dog. Like, because you said it's corrections, and then
But
every
it's
other
politics.
But
It's
for
still,
sure.
it's the
Yeah.
ego.
But I
ego
thought
thing.
at some point the general public would say, "Hey, you shooting 30% right now. People not coming home correct.
But the
people
problem,
not
the
coming
problem
home."
is,
People
the
even-
problem
that's
is
what
we
people
live in a
call
very
it.
punitive society. People don't care if you keep going back to prison. They want you to go back to prison. They want you in prison because they believe that punishment. Again, what did I talk about earlier? We parent that way. We send kids to school. They get graded. You didn't do your homework. F. Every level of our development until we get a job is based on some form of punishment for not behaving the way that we want you to behave. So going to the Department of Corrections has never been about rehabilitation. It's always been about making sure that the public knows that the government is going to put the bad guys away. And the reason that most of them look the way that they look is because the public has a perception of who the bad guys are. So
I
yes,
was
there's a
gonna say,
reason
yeah.
why the people come up to Catherine afterwards who say, why can't I get yoga? Yes, I've committed crimes, but I got away with it. There's a reason they look that way, and the people like Johnny, who, you know what I mean? There's a reason that happens. This is not a Department of Corrections. It is a department of making sure that people feel safe in the suburbs.
how do you
Yeah,
do
but
that?
it's
Shit.
It's fear.
It's fear.
right?
That's
And
exactly
so
what I was about to say.
You
yeah.
stoke the
It's,
flame of fear.
It's not just
right?
punishment. It is fully like
No, it's all about fear,
Yeah.
right? The reason when you're talking about free throw percentages and why things continue the way because of fear, right? So if sometimes I'm afraid, right? Because what do you show me? Like when we talk about contextos and the work that we're doing, it's about complicating narratives, right? So that's our goal, to complicate narratives. So when you're talking about it, it's the danger of a single story, right? So there's one narrative about a particular community, even with law enforcement, they show up, they react or responding in a particular way. Why? Based on the narrative about the community. And so if it's fear, then fear drives it. We talked about social media. So I remember when I first came home, and I was like, I'm not doing that internet shit. I'm not getting on Facebook, Instagram, nothing, right?
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Yeah. But the thing I thought about, like, right after I got out was like, folks only know me for who they say I was, right? So I have to show something different. So in the beginning, I would just show everything that I was doing positive, just particularly because I didn't want someone to hurt me thinking I was the same person that was coming back, right? So I wanted to, like...
It is the power of social media. Is
Yeah,
you
and so-
can story tell a little bit.
It's about storytelling.
There's a whole detriment to what story you're telling and what kind of fucking
I mean, that's the thing.
farce
That's
that
the
is,
Pandora's
but-
box, right?
Yeah, right,
Because there's a lot
but-
of things that happen.
but in a positive way, you get to tell your story.
Yes, and so it has for all the good there is, right? we know that, for all the bad that we see, there's a lot of good that comes out of it. But I referred to it. It was like I thought of like social media. All of it was like the Terminator movies, right? Like I was waiting on Sarah Connor. Right? I was like this is Skynet,
Oh, you
right?
ain't gonna have to wait too much longer.
No,
Elon doing it.
No, but
yeah,
no.
but you
Social
weren't
media. No. So think about it this way: when you think about social media, right? When you think about social media, it removed because of like the sort of filtering of people's stories, images, all that. It sort of removes how you see people, right? And it starts to like tear away at a humanity. So for me, that's Skynet, right? Skynet and Terminator wasn't about. For me, it wasn't about just like machines
Gary's
taking
upset.
over. It's the way you take. So just so you know, I think in movies, this is the way my life is.
No, I'm not
Yeah,
mad at
I'm
you.
a
I'm just mad
storyteller.
at this
But-
is why this is the
but
first
even-
time we had this talk.
But here's the other, even beyond the filtering, right? The cameras, digital cameras now, if you have a particular face shape, it won't show your face the way that it looks. That's not something I made up. You can Google it. What he's saying is, you don't even know what people look like anymore. You don't know what they're showing you. Illinois made it illegal for them to use the face filters, but you can still use other filters that make you look different than you look, right? You can, the number of, she's catfishing. Nobody's catfishing. No one looks like they look anymore. No one looks like they look online in real, no one.
No.
Not any people. So now when you have these, he's socially awkward, I don't go outside. There are people who only know each other through the game, right? They've played Xbox, PlayStation, for years. That's their social interaction. They get off work, they come home, they put the headphones on. They got a friend named Johnny who lives in Saigon. They've been friends for 15 years. They've never seen him. So much of our interaction is there, and it's in movies, right? But it's also, I'm a science fiction nerd. That's what Vonnegut and 1984, and that's what I was reading when I was a kid. So seeing that all of your
1984
friends,
isn't really science fiction anymore.
right? It's not. It's real. But like when you're reading about them burning books, that's happening in real life now.
Yep.
When you're reading about the people in the walls, the people in the TV, that becoming your real people. We're watching reality TV. We're so entertained by Real Housewives and whatever shows we're watching. We know more about them than we do about our neighbors. This is the first time in my life that I've lived in a building and I don't know the name of my neighbors. Everywhere I lived growing up, I knew every single neighbor, not just in my building, but on my block.
Right.
We've gotten farther and farther from knowing the people that live close to us and knowing more and more about people who are not even real people because they are manufactured people, right? Like they're filtered, their story is being told or shaped by a publicist or a stylist. Nothing is real.
And
And
everybody
sometimes paid
aspires.
actors to
And
activate
and
shit
paid
on-
actors.
And
especially,
everybody
yeah.
aspires to be that,
And
right?
that's what people
And that-
want to.
and-
My
and-
son
and
wants to be a YouTuber.
And so you don't. So the humanity. So that's the whole Skynet Terminator reference, right?
Right.
It's like the humanity of who we are gets lost, and so maybe you'll be Sarah Connor, right? You need to come back and find John Connor. Save the world, right? But
This
we
is
have
crazy.
we have to think about it that way. Like I know it sounds crazy, but when I think about it, I be like, damn, man, what, like.
Because you done seen more, though.
I mean, for me, it's like when something happens and someone pulls out a camera instead of calling 911, they take a picture, right?
It's content.
That's all. That's part of this.
That's just so sad,
Your
though,
life
bro.
is
You so
content, though.
far from... You know how
I'm
crazy it is that somebody could be losing their life and you just want to get your views up?
No, they're gonna
Yo,
pull out
that's
their
some
camera and
sick-
say somebody call 911
Right.
while they holding their phone,
While
taking
you're holding a
Well, again,
911
just-
calling
and so
device.
that is a trauma response too.
Yeah, it
A
is.
separation from, and it's not an excuse of a trauma response.
It's
right?
just because of
it's
how
a
we're
test.
programmed
you
currently.
learn patterns
It's
in
societal
your brain.
programming.
So I'm actually curious, especially with like storytelling and what y'all are doing with Contextos. Like, how do you delineate this stuff at all? Like, do you try to sort of separate like telling your story for the receipt of it, right? Like the public eye, like, or is it like more of just the art of practicing true writing, like storytelling? I'm just curious if you guys like had to have these conversations at all of like,
No,
this
so-
is how the world's gonna view this and this, because we're all, I think again, pattern trained now. Like if I post a picture, I am even as a millennial, like I'm waiting for the response to it.
Right. No. So for us, what we do is one of the things that we understand is that people make meaning out of their stories, right? This is how human beings make meaning out of life, right? Stories. Everything they do is there's a story connected to it, right? How you sell things, how you pitch things, whatever, there's a story. I'm here, we're talking about Beyond Bars, there's a story, right? There's a story connected to it. So when we think about it is when we're working with authors, it's like, who do you want to hear your story? Who is your audience? And so the author chooses the audience they choose to write to, right? And so our emphasis is on personal reflection, right? So thinking about a moment, a time in your life, right? How do you feel? How did you feel about it then? How do you feel about it now? So sort of creating this opportunity to reflect, because that's how we get to the healing, right? Because someone's going to initially tell a story, and you'll hear it, and you'll be like, yeah. And so we get to the revision process, and you getting feedback from your peers, and they're asking questions, and you wrote this whole 5-page, 6-page draft of whatever you wanted to write. And then when they start giving you feedback and asking questions, there's literally 3 sentences inside of that 6 pages you wrote that is your actual story that you need to tell. Not the story you want to tell, but the story you need to tell to sort of help you unpack and sort through your shit. So when I talk about contextos in the work we do, it's like coming here, you see I got a book bag. I always got a bag. Sometimes I got shit in the bag that I have no reason to carry. I don't even need it here. I didn't even need the bag here, but I walked in with a bag, right? That's the metaphor for our lives, right? When we came out our mother's wombs, right? We came with a bag. The doctor gave you that, and they sent you home. You got that and a bag. And in that bag, what happens is your community. So we talk about trauma, we talk about poverty, we talk about all these things that get placed in your bag. That's based on the community or the people that bring you home, right? So you people that's in your household putting things in the bag, and then when you go outside the household, that community is putting things in the bag, and then the society you're living in is putting things in that bag. Roughly 11 or 12 years old, what happens? You start to have an awareness of the shit that's in your bag. Damn, we broke. I've been wearing Matt Andrews 5000s for the last 2-3 years. This ain't it. I need some
Pro wings.
This ain't it. I don't need that shit no more. I want Nike, or I want, now they want, I got a 12-year-old just sent me a picture of some fucking Balenciagas, right?
That's what they doing now.
Some hoomst.
Exactly, some Balenciagas.
They do that now.
I'm not buying that.
I mean, I bought a
Heavy
picture.
bag.
Right?
No.
But
I bought a picture.
No,
I'll
the
go
kids
to
like
the store and take the
kids
picture.
like designing now.
That's good for them, but they need to design a job.
They've been but again, it's about how they've been informed, right?
Yeah, they've been marketed Balenciaga.
And
I get marketed Rolex. I'm like, yeah, I don't know who you think you're fucking looking at. Like,
Instagram
I
must
don't
know
where
I'm
you
poor because
think.
they be like,
No,
hey,
but
here goes some
even
discounts.
in that, it's what's placed in the bag. So if you're in a household where they value those type of things, that's the shit that's getting placed in your bag. So 11 or 12 years old, you have this awareness, and they some call it puberty. In religion, they call it the age of awakening,
Yep.
right? And so whatever you want to call it, there's this awareness that, man, I started to see the world a certain way. And so what do? You start to put things in the bag, and then you were wondering why, you
Yeah.
walk a little
By the way,
funny.
for white people listening, this is a breakdown of Bag Lady.
For sure, right? But you're carrying this shit around, right? And everyone's carrying it. So black, white, green, everyone's carrying this bag. They got a bag. You got a bag full of shit. And so what we do at Contextos, we just create a table so you can dump
your
that
stuff
shit
out.
out and sort through it, right? I carried this when I was. This is something my mother put in the bag. I don't even need this anymore. I don't have to carry it.
It's not mine.
This is not
We
mine.
talked- we
so this
talked
is like
about
clearing
that.
out your bag.
We're not talking about my mean mother king.
No.
Oh.
Remember we were talking about that voice in your head, and you have to know if that's your voice or not, because there are a lot of times where you're feeling you're chastised about a behavior that you did and you feel bad about it. You feel shame about it. Is that your shame, or is that my mama told me not to do that? My teacher told me not to do that. The pastor, the imam, whoever told you not to do that. Is it your voice?
Am I actually
When you
not
dump the
smart?
stuff
Am I
out on your
actually not?
bag,
Yeah.
how much of the stuff that's in your bag is your stuff
Mm-hmm.
and how much of it is someone else's? Because everybody deserves to have a belief system that's their own. And most of us don't. Most of us have a passed down belief system, a manipulated by our friends, family, and belief system. And the older we get, the harder it is to get away from that, because it's work. It takes work to think, what do I believe about that? And then if you do that work and you find out you don't believe what all of your peer group believes about that, well, damn, man, am I going to lose my friends?
Right.
Peer pressure doesn't stop at childhood. You 50 years old, you got 50-year-old guys who are like, man, I don't know, I wasn't raised like that. You are 50 years old, dog. Who the fuck cares how you were raised? You can make your own calls. You can make your own decisions, dog.
Because some of the shit we was
Say it
raised on
again.
not right.
It's
right?
right.
It's
That's
simply,
toxic.
It's not right.
It's toxic
right?
as shit.
And so in that sense, and again, and you can take when you take, because you're gonna walk away with the bag. You don't get to leave the bag on the table. And you don't. We just talked about it earlier. You don't get out of this shit alive, right?
do not.
But you're gonna carry that bag until it's your time to leave. And so you get an opportunity to determine what's in your bag from this point on.
You
It
get to
just
So-
won't. It won't just be your family shit. It won't just be your community shit. It won't just be the society that you're living in. It won't just be their stuff. It'll be things that you chose to put in that bag. But we have to get to a point where we're willing to accept that we even carry a bag, right? That we have to. That we're carrying shit that's too heavy. That's why your shoulder hurt all the time.
I think, I mean, let me know what you guys think about this, but I think we're kind of there socially right now with this whole capital T trauma talk, micro trauma, like with the whole, whitewashing of yoga and all of that. Is like a lot of people, I feel like we're, and maybe this is just, and as I said, you guys give me feedback on this, maybe this is just white people, but like I feel like my collective environment seems to be pretty aware that everyone's traumatized, like to a degree. Everyone has a bag,
We're
right?
getting
Like
there.
everyone's walking around with a
getting
bag
there.
now. And I think if there's anything, I mean, especially in the yoga community, right? We talk a lot about sort of like the spiritual bypassing of like, oh yeah, like my bag's good now, so like I'm gonna keep walking this path because like it's only about me. I think there's a little bit of that, but I don't know. I feel like you were gonna.
I just
pop
think
in.
that Johnny, because we're Gen X. It's a bigger,
Oh yeah, so
it's a
one might be
bigger
talking about
battle.
us.
No, but I think it's a good point, because your generation is doing the work. Especially the younger the millennial, the more likely they are to have at least an awareness. Gen Z is doing the work. They don't give a shit about what previous generations do. They're absolutely trying to figure the world out for themselves. But for Johnny and for me, any new thought you have, any progressive thoughts you have, any outside of what you were raised thoughts you have, how hard is it for you in your peer groups, in your regular community, that this is who I grew up with? How hard is it for you to introduce that to those groups? Because for me, it has been.
Shit, it's hard for me to introduce it to myself. So
Yeah.
when you just
Right,
talk
that's
about,
what- that's exactly.
When you're saying that, your peer group or the folks that you're coming up in your community, they understand it. I'm just talking specifically about the yoga
Now,
community.
yeah, and
They
it's
have
new.
a-
It's like last
no,
couple years, you know
yeah,
what I mean?
but
yeah.
even in that though, right? It's just we're changing the shit that we're putting in the bag,
Mm.
right? Because even in that, it becomes something else, right?
Yeah.
And so there'll be a new thing that causes harm. Right?
Well, I feel
that
like
we
this
don't
is kind of the
recognize.
bag now. Is now
Yeah.
everyone's like, I have trauma, and then there's
That
Exactly.
is
See,
the bag.
Yeah,
like,
and-
yeah,
and-
I
but
have
that's-
autism.
But
I have
intellectualizing
ADHD,
the
I have
intellectualizing
dyslexia,
the
like,
trauma
and we
is
all do
not
have
healing
those
it though.
things.
And you're right.
Yeah.
We're all
That's a
talking
really good
about it,
point.
but we're
Yeah.
not healing it, and we're not working towards a new thing.
Yeah,
it
because that
becomes a
part's
different-
hard.
It becomes
Yeah.
a different type of thing that you stuff in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just something else that gets stuffed in the bag. What I'm saying is that having these conversations, even like a conversation like this, it's not shit that happens normally, right? And so like having these conversations and opening these conversations up to more and more people creates opportunity for us to sort of examine what's in our bags, right? And then understanding that we have to continue. Like it's not, I went through my bag, I got it. So that's what you said, like, I've dealt with my shit. No, you haven't.
Yeah.
Right?
You're dealing with it.
Because to your
maybe.
point, we are healing every day.
You're
You're
healing
not fucking
journey,
done.
right?
Yeah.
So as human beings, we're always in the process of becoming. When you've become, it's over with. You're done. You've become dead. That's what you get.
Yeah, that's what I call enlightenment too. By
yeah.
the way, this whole like yoga path of like now you are one. Like you're not here anymore. Then like this is a
Yeah.
human experience.
Because you're in it,
Yeah.
and that's the whole process, right? So
Yeah.
you're in this process of becoming, and so if we're in a constant process of becoming, that means we're in a constant process of healing. There's going to always be something we're going to be working towards. We're going to be healing from, right? That's just life. That's how
Yeah.
life is set up for us, and so we have to think about things in that way, and sort of make sure that we continue to create space for people to be able to do just that, right? Sort through their shit, and so, and this is just me because I went to school or what have you. I went to college, whatever, right? And so my path was, I'm gonna be I'm a nigga from prison, pardon the language, that
Nah, you good.
decided he wants to go get be a fucking clinical psychologist, right? So I go to school and then I realized that it's not enough psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, social workers, counselors in the world to deal with the need, right? So we have to empower people. We have to create the spaces ourselves. We have to get back to, and here's another movie reference, right, for you Game of Thrones folks, if you're not, right? So Tyrion's last speech when he talks about the end of the, what's the better story than Bran the Broken, right? That whole monologue that he gives. In that moment, he's talking about the power of stories. Stories have led us. Human beings have made made meaning out of stories since the beginning of time, right? And so we have to be able to get back to that, right? The village is gone, right? Because the village, what happens? In the village, you come around, people tell stories, you hear about, you know everything, right? Then we moved into this sort of the nuclear family, 2 parents, 2.5 kids, a dog, white picket fence, all of that, right? And well, Ozzie and Harriet. So yeah, that might be too old.
No, I'm
Shit. Okay,
That's for
you
me
with
and you.
Okay, so
It is.
all right, so all right, so when we're talking about, but again, it's this table. It becomes the dinner table, right?
Floyd has been nice to you today too. But
I hope your
think
cable
you're-
go out. I hope your streaming go out. I hope you don't have Wi-Fi for the rest of the week. That's what I hope.
But again, you got a hot spot. This becomes the dinner table, and at the dinner table, what happens at the dinner table? We were supposed to be able to sit down and have those conversations,
Right.
but unfortunately, the way this world is set up, you here, right? Your wife is at home.
She's literally if anybody could see that, what's happening right now is she's texting me and asking me, do I want her to order food?
So again,
So the dinner table conversation isn't happening because
you have to be here doing work,
Right.
right? And so
because we can't afford to not
work.
work anymore.
And so, because that being our reality, what happens is we have a generation of people who never get an opportunity to sit at the feet of the
elders.
the Gen Xers, or to
the story,
learn,
yeah.
right? To hear the stories about how the family got to where it's at,
Mm-hmm.
and because we don't have that, there's this disconnect. What we see is that bringing it back to the ecosystem. Like all of us fit inside the ecosystem. Violence and everything we see in our communities is the byproduct of a disrupted ecosystem. And as long as the ecosystem is disrupted, we're going to continue to have the problems that we have. And it's not about like how much resources you pour into it. You can give all the money in the world, but if we're not thinking about it as an ecosystem, we're not thinking about value and how we value people and how people value themselves, we're going to continue to be in this space.
So you bring up a really good point. First off, I'm gonna just praise Contextos again, because when I was doing work with y'all and I was leading circles, they gave me the ability to get creative, and so I was working with high schoolers, and so we had the term secure the bag.
Yeah.
That's the thing young
Did
people
you turn Kyrie into a comic then? Because no, thank you. Or,
He came in. I thought he was a comic when he got there because he was funny.
Thank you. Your
Look
brother
at-
thought I was fun. Anyway,
So yes, so he did. He inspired you
hate
to go on stage and make people sit through whatever you do for 10 minutes. That's
look,
crazy.
So when I was with people who value me more, they usually did a fucking thing. You did a hand thing.
Did anyone? If it wasn't on camera, it didn't happen.
All right.
think you did a
They're
forward
assholes. So anyway, I brought the idea of securing the bag because I do think that when we are putting stuff in our bag, we don't always recognize like who else is putting stuff in our bag while we're cleaning our bag out. So like for example, compound trauma is something that has come up. Shout out to y'all. When we look at the idea of like, if I'm sitting here working with kids and we're talking about our dreams, our beliefs, and one of us gets shot,
That is a trauma for the whole group.
and we got to unpack that, but we was already unpacking the stuff from the previous 13 years. And to see amazing, historically important, culturally schools like CVS lack stuff like crisis therapists that I know exist in some of those spaces, is like, yo, what the hell are we doing? Because fast forward, I went on to continue to do the work, and I'm doing work with Ready, and the funding gets snatched. Flashback Ready is a violence intervention prevention services program. So you telling me that the funding gets snatched for the programs that help people who are getting back home and they need more correcting because they didn't get help getting a CDL or getting a GED, but then you took the money from that. Right. So I watched the organization crumble. Some of the brothers who I was actually helping is on Madison right now, passed out, drunk. So what do we do differently as a society to hold those things accountable, or those systems accountable? Because I know that when that funding got snatched, it didn't dissipate. The need didn't dissipate.
And
Violence
the
is
funding
still
didn't
up.
dissipate either. That's the thing that's frustrating is that the funding that existed still exists, but they moved it to something else. And then you start asking yourself, why are you constantly complaining about the violence when you keep taking the funding away from the programs that could help prevent the violence? And that goes back to the original statement. They aren't trying to prevent the violence. They're trying to punish it. It's theater.
Theater.
And I'm saying that very aware of the fact that it sounds like I'm saying there's nothing we can do, and that's not what I'm saying, because that's really the point of all of this is to get everyone to give up, because once you give up, they've won. Right? If once Johnny Page gives up, once Anthony Fang gives up, once Beyond the Bars gives up, and we stop talking about, you like, you know what, it doesn't matter what we do, it doesn't matter what we say, this is going to keep happening. It's always happened. This is how the system was supposed to work. It's working the way it was supposed to, and there's nothing we can do. Once that happens, it is absolutely over. There is no Sarah Connor coming.
Project 25.
That's what
2025
that's
happens.
Project 25.
That is.
2025.
That's the Terminator.
And
Yeah.
so we have to be really careful about how we talk about it, because it is scary. It is terrifying. I have a 19-year-old and an 8-year-old. My 19-year-old might be the most emotionally intelligent human being I've ever met. At 19, I wasn't near that. At 30, I wasn't near that. My 8-year-old is exactly who I was at 8 years old. The only difference I can see for my 8-year-old and me at that age was I'm actually trying to listen to him and to acknowledge whatever he's going through. But that makes me the weirdo in my peer group, right? Because oh, you're not doing this. Sometimes you gotta get in that ass. First of all, what?
You sound just like your peers, dog.
But listen to that sentence. Like, if you say that in general, sometimes you got to get in that ass. That sounds crazy.
No
But
context.
if you say that about a child that you're raising, specifically in the black community, everyone else knows what you mean. That's terrifying.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
That's exactly. And so we know about epigenetics, right? We know that we're passing these traumas down, but not only are we passing these traumas down genetically, we're repeating the behavior so that they're going to pass the and so all this cycle breaking isn't just, I got to stop spanking my kid. I got to stop yelling at my kid. I got to stop. The cycle breaking means even if I stop doing that, my kid's still going to have the trauma. My kid's going to have some of the trauma. We're breaking the cycles for my great-grandkids. And so it's not useless. We have to keep fighting. It's probably not going to happen in our generation, but you have to keep going, man.
I mean, and I know you want to ask the question, but just in addition to that, right? So to your point, so I have a 4-year-old, right? And I don't know, like this 4-year-old is advanced, right? But because it's just the way I think about the world is different than the way my parents thought about the world, and the way most of my peers. I don't do the whooping. I never did goo goo gaga. I've been having full conversations with this kid since she showed up, right? And so when she shows up in spaces, people can't believe she's 4, right? But I think about that, right? Because the way I live my life at this point is that. And I don't know if the Native Americans said it, or if it's African proverb, or it depends on who you ask. You know, the Native American African folks are the same, right? Whatever the conversation is, what I'm saying is this: we'll
keep it to an hour today, but we'll have you back for that.
Yeah, there's a proverb that says, and it says that this world wasn't left to us by our parents; it was loaned to us by our children, right? And so for me, I'm always thinking about. So why I continue to do the work is because I want to create a world. Or I want to respect the world that was loaned to me by my children and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren, right?
You hear that,
and
boomers?
if you're coming into it thinking that you want to respect the world wasn't left to me by my parents, it was loaned to me by my children. That's a different way to think about the world. And so, and whether that be climate change and all these other things that leads to these larger conversations, it's about how you sort of contextualize it for yourself. And for me, it's about what is the world I want my 4-year-old to grow up in, and what is the world I want my grandchildren to grow up in?
Damn, boy. That absolutely changes how you impact things, right? Like my wife and I talk about me going to the gym all the time because I tease her. I say I'm trying to stay sexy because she's a little younger than I am. I'm trying to make sure that she still finds me attractive as I age. As I get older, I don't want to be like, if you don't get the granddaddy stuff off me. But the reality is,
Feel your pain, brother.
you know what I'm saying? When you said you had a 4-year-old, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. You call me when you want to go. I'll go to LA. We'll talk about it. But the reality is, the work that I'm doing is as much for my family as it is for me. It's not vanity at this point, but nobody looking for me. I'm 100. I'm not walking down the street and 20-year-old women are going, ooh, you've been in the gym, because that's gross. First of all, my daughter's 19. You know what I mean? But the bigger story is, hey, man, I don't know what this world is going to look like. I need to be able to be out there with my son. I need to be able to be out there with my wife. I need to be able to protect my family in ways that are still relevant. And I need to be able to do that without them having to take care of me. I don't need them in 20 years to be like, yeah, well, you know, we got to take daddy to the hospital again. He been smoking weed and drinking tequila every day for the last 20 years because the world sucks. That's one of the things that you do is you respond with that.
Escapism.
It's escapism. And so,
I'm just saying in 20 years, I plan to be smoking weed. I plan to
I'm going to
start.
still smoke the weed.
I don't even smoke now. I'm going to smoke then.
That's why I looked up. I looked off when he said weed and tequila. I was, ooh,
Yeah, no, I'm gonna smoke the weed.
hot
I
in there.
don't know what y'all talking about. No, let's be clear. Let me make sure that we're clear and it's on camera. Whichever one of these cameras is, I'm going to continue to smoke weed. I will never.
Soon to be sponsored.
Let me just be clear.
Soon to be
sponsored
If y'all
by
make it
Cannabis
illegal,
Podcast.
look. I don't commit crimes, but if y'all make it illegal again, I will smoke weed. I'm going because it's keeping me from whooping y'all asses. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Not cheaper.
we
Not
have
cheaper
a-
than Bill.
We have
It's,
a lot.
it's cheaper than these hooks to the ribs.
We have a lot to talk about that stuff.
Double
I feel like
hooks
in
is
future
aggressive.
episodes. But while we have you, like in the last couple minutes, I feel like Felicia's sort of transition there was quite apropos to what I was trying to ask, which is like what was in your bag and what are you trying to take out and what do you feel like you got now? You know, like,
You gotta ask that every week now.
So
it's-
what,
yeah,
what's
I
in your
think it's a
bag?
new-
What's
Yeah,
in your bag?
Yeah, we
What-
owe you.
what was
we
in
owe you
my
a bag
bag?
for that.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
for
gonna
sure.
keep that.
Call it what's in your sack.
okay.
Whoa,
Yuck.
bro.
Pause, as they say in New York, right?
No Diddy.
As soon as I said it, I was like, yes, that's
actually
You
too
did.
far.
He
Right.
was like, hey, yo.
I said it to myself. You saw it? I was like, what's in your sack? Yo.
Sometimes you try something and
Yeah, that's how you find
and
out.
you want to
That's-
try. Yeah.
Thank you,
That
Kat.
is also Kyrie's first opening message on Snapchat.
What's in your sack is exactly how he asked me to be on the podcast.
No, it doesn't even track.
Hey, man. y'all
Doesn't
gotta
even make
stop.
sense. But it
Why
still
y'all do
works.
that in front of people I respect? What's wrong with y'all? Y'all ain't got
No,
no class.
it's all good. But for me, I think it was understanding. So when you're talking about what was in my bag was understanding and recognizing that my life up to that point was all response, right? Well, not even response, reacting. It was all reaction, right? And so I went from reacting to responding, right? So reaction and response, right? Reaction is right. Response takes a little time, right? You got to
Space
think
between.
about things.
Yeah. we talk
Yes,
about that
and
a lot.
so
Yeah.
so for me, what was in my bag was the reaction.
Okay.
Right. So that was the thing that I had to get. Like, I was the person if wherever I got mad at, that's where that shit happened at. Right. And so once I was able to address
Like every
that,
reaction was dessert. Was
yeah, in my
deserving.
head
Yeah.
it was if you did it, you had it coming.
And maybe it
whatever
was,
it was. And maybe it wasn't. Right. It just depends on what the circumstance was, because my reaction may not warrant. The act may not have warranted the reaction, but that was just but that was a reaction. Again, my reaction was based on trauma, right? My experiences up to that point, right? And once I recognized that, once I understood that I was reacting to trauma, I began to sort of take control of how I responded to my trauma, right? And so, my scars remind me of where I've been. They don't dictate where I go. Right, and so that's not my quote, bro. That's
We are
what's
in
his
bars,
Rossi?
not
That's
beyond.
Rossi
In
off
bars today.
Criminal Minds or some shit, right?
You better say that then, because
I'm
I was
just
about to
saying.
give it to you.
You can,
It's still a bar.
it
It's
may
still a
be
bar.
it may be a
Remains
bar,
a
but
bar.
it's a
Oh,
character on a
bar.
TV show. So whatever.
So shout out to the writers.
Yeah. Shout out to the writers
That's
of
why
that
they
show.
should have never had to strike you, raggedy mother.
Okay, but yeah, so that was the thing that was the thing that I took out of the bag. The thing that I put in the bag, right? Because there was things that was put in my bag that I needed to continue to carry, and that was purpose, and that was like thinking about people, right? Because I was raised a certain way, right? To work to be concerned with people, and just that concern is just sort of like moved down the line. So when I'm talking about this world was loaned to me by my children, it's like, bam. Is this the world I want to leave to my children, right? Whatever I'm doing, is this the thing that I want to leave to my children? And when I started thinking about it like that, I started thinking about the world differently, and I started to respond versus react. So now, the thing that would have, sent me off 30 years ago, I'm just looking at you and laughing like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You okay? You having
good?
a moment, right? And every day, and I'm kind, right? I try to be kind to people. You understand? We have this thing that we have to be nice. You don't have to be nice, but you should be kind.
Oh, I
But
say
you-
that all
but
the
you know what's that's
I say that
but
all
you know
the
what I think is
time.
interesting about that, and we don't think about this. We always talk about our traumas. That kindness, that act of kindness, is the opposite of the trauma, right? Somebody made you smile today. Somebody was kind to you today. That has a smaller impact because of the way the human mind works, but it still has an impact. And if we're constantly being kind to people, then we do have the opportunity to shift that.
Yeah.
It's very. I apologize to my son. I have apologized to my son more times in 8 years than my parents combined have apologized to me in 52.
Mm-hmm.
Either I am considerably making way more mistakes than they did. I'm not infallible. It's possible. I be fucking up.
Two things can be true at once.
But also, the generation before us was raised that children don't get apologies. And so we're humanizing kids. We're giving kids the hey, man, you don't deserve to be talked to that way just because I was mad. So that's kindness. I'm starting it in those relationships, but it does carry over. Hey, man, it's great that you were here. I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. Because those small words you can take home with you, just like I said, oh, this motherfucker, here come this motherfucker. And that's important. We've got to keep doing that collectively.
And it's the
There's
energy.
It's the
yoga,
energy.
right? It's the
It's
energy.
the energy.
Yeah, I wanna make sure like the energy I'm putting out, because that's the energy I want back.
Real talk.
Is
Right.
that without we got to wrap, so we want to know certainly a couple things about you, Johnny, on the way out, but without putting something else in your bag, is the delineation between like kindness and niceness sort of how you keep yourself from and like doing too much, because you're obviously giving a lot of yourself, right, to back to this world, to your kids, to Contextos, to folks that have, experienced, I don't even want to say like misfortune. It's just, you're doing what you're doing, right, in the world. You said you got off a plane from DC either last night or today. You're here today. Like, how do you navigate like protecting yourself and your, you know what I'm saying, and like making sure your bag is clean while you're giving out probably a good bit of yourself?
Yeah, I'm still learning, right?
Yeah.
And so like even the kind and nice thing, it took me a while to get there because I just felt like I had to be nice. It's like I don't have to be fucking nice. I can be kind, right? And being kind, I can be kind to you, right, and be nice to myself by telling you I can't make it today, Kyrie. I'm sorry, right? But again, I'll make that up at another time. But I just need to do this thing. So for me, I don't do an excellent job at it, but I'm getting better at it because I understand that I have to create space for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing we ask, and you guys can jump in if I'm missing anything else, but that we just like to ask out of fun. We talked about this a little on the way in. Your cousin, or your wife's cousin, right, is Rick Wilson.
Yeah.
We like to ask people in general just like what they're listening to, other bars, so to speak, on the way out. But just like
Right now, at the
just
moment,
what you're enjoying. Yeah, we just like to. We often find obviously that winds up putting some people on, but more than that, we're just curious. Like, what are you listening to? What's making you feel
So
nice?
I just listened to this kid, Zion Ali. I don't know. I literally just heard him the other day. He came by, he's walking past and doing promos and just walking in places, and I was like, "Man, this kid's dope, right?" Because it was just like feel good music and it was something different. Yeah, so that was the thing that made me that. But what I was listening to pulling up was Life Jennings, right?
Yeah.
So I'm one of those guys. Right?
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah.
Then another thing is, how can people support you?
Yes.
You're doing the work. You've been doing the work. You've empowered a lot of change makers. One being myself. How can people support you? Support Contextos? Support the movement?
Man, follow us at Contextos on all social media platforms, right?
You sound like one of the kids that said, follow me online.
No, it's the truth though, right? So look, listen.
At Contextos
Build awareness
_.
around the work.
Yeah, and just I don't know when you air what your air time and period is, but we have a show. We have a groundbreaking thing in West Garfield. Saturday it's going down.
I was waiting on my invite. I didn't get that.
You didn't? Okay. Well, I apologize. It'll be this Saturday the 17th. It's face painters, musicians. Yusuf Ali is performing. We got Sean Mack or some Chicago.
DJ Sean Mack.
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
Right.
Never mind. I'm probably not gonna talk about it.
It's gonna be it's a big event and it'll be happening this Saturday at Washington and Kildare. Yeah, we built a whole story garden at Washington Kildare in partnership with Ma'afa Mount Pilgrim Church in the city of Chicago.
That's dope.
Yeah, it's going to be dope. So if you know people, have them come out. There's bouncy houses, jerk villas, providing free food,
Bro,
right?
Don't do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's
I
Jerk's
shouldn't say
Villa.
that.
Because as soon as you said Jerkville,
I thought I was sponsoring. I thought I
Pulling
was
up.
sponsoring.
I'm 100% pulling up. Jerk's
All
Villa
bound.
out west
so
on Madison.
So there'll be food, there'll be
Washington
face
and
painters, there'll be
Kildare.
things for kids. He'll block over, but it's
Yeah.
right there. Yeah, it'll
It's
be
so big. Never mind.
yeah, it'll be food. It'll be fun. It'll be you'll get an opportunity to see the work live, right? Because we're telling the story with this garden. With it's called the Sankofa Story Garden because we want to make sure that we look back so that we can look forward, right? And so,
That's deep. That's another bar.
well, come check it out. Yeah.
Got you, brother.
So Contextos on all socials.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else? Any final closing words? We'll get better at tightening up.
And if
these.
y'all got some
Yeah.
opportunities for
That
for
was closing the
Contextos,
bar.
if y'all got some resources, reach out to them. Another thing is they make physical little books. So y'all can lock in and grab the physical books and support them by buying those from y'all, correct?
Well, technically, we don't sell books. We won't. I don't want to make money off other folks' stories, and so until I figured that part out, how to pay the folks whose stories it is.
Right.
We'll take a donation though.
Donations,
We'll
but
take
you
a
can
donation.
still request these, and the stories are very powerful.
And you
Very
can,
powerful.
and like honestly, I would rather you if you can't donate to Contextos, you can go on issue.com Chicago Project and read all of the stories of
There are amazing
folks
stories.
inside of Chicago.
Hell yeah.
Amazing stories, and they're great storytellers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, by the way, have heard the impact of Contextos. We've talked to multiple people, both with PYC and just folks we know in and out that have been greatly impacted by your organization.
All right,
so
thank you.
always good to know. One other thing I should just mention, depending on who's listening to the podcast, is Prison Yoga Scholarship Fund for folks that have been incarcerated is live. We will pay for your yoga. If you have been in and out, especially of CCJ, but we'll talk about it if it's been somewhere else. Like we will pay for a yoga journey. You can find that stuff on our website. And I would be a bad board member if I did not mention it because it's free yoga. So
There you go.
and we have the money, or we got the money specifically for that. We'll work on the rest of the resources for everything else, right? But thank you, Johnny Page, so much for being here today. We
Very
appreciate you
Also,
so
I
much.
would like to formally invite you to come back so you can tell more of your story.
Yes. We
Oh
will
yeah,
have you
for
back
sure. I was gonna
sure.
say y'all gotta let me come back because
Absolutely.
this was dope.
Please.
Like,
Yeah,
for
we
real,
will.
for
We
real.
didn't get to half of honestly what we do, but we're trying to be better both for our listeners and for the production team at the Lincoln Lodge, Deanna and Tyler today. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for listening. As always, if there are questions and stuff that we're not asking, things you want to know, whether it's about Johnny, about anyone, about the system, about us, probably not, but
About these snacks that I've been over here
yeah, about
drowning in.
these snacks.
This brother has been sneaking and eating
so
snacks like a
hungry.
5-year-old. The whole
Hit
thing.
us up.
Look, it's ridiculous.
Otherwise, I think we are.
Right, y'all
I
didn't get
think
none
we
of
are
the tails
beyond-
from the cell block,
beyond
right?
bars.
Yeah, I didn't do none of that, right? Yeah.
That's what
I
I'm
had
saying,
I got 24 years in prison. Y'all don't want to hear none of that shit.
We got-
Y'all
we-
bars?
I-
No, I'm just-
All this positive shit, sir. Just the positive shit. Y'all hear about when I got shanked 2 times? No, I'm serious. I got shanked in 2006. That ain't no good story. It's just crazy.
Commissary
Focus.
commentary.
Commissary
ABC
commentary.
shit.
That's
See, that's
it.
why they had it on
No,
Star.
that's it.
That's
That's
it.
it. Commissary
Commissary
commentary.
That's a podcast right
What?
there.
Hell
You know how
yeah.
many? I would tell you that 85% of the
We gotta
shankings
cut it because
were
we can't be out here
involved
giving out
with
these ideas.
commissary
You
involved.
better not get that one out. Hold that one.
No,
You better
cut
hold
that.
that one.
Cut that. We keep that inside.
Yeah, that's us.
Commissary commentary.